Well, welcome everybody. We're so happy to have you here with me tonight. My name is Ann Dolin, and for the last 26 years, my team of tutors, college consultants, and executive function coaches have been helping kids to do better in school and definitely in college. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Navigating college independence, learning the key skills your new college student needs for success. Now, many of you have students that are already in college, and some of you, they're about to head out to college. And there's something for everybody this evening. But before we start, I want you to imagine that your child is in college and they come back at Thanksgiving and they say, Mom, Dad, everything is going so well. I'm on top of my work. I'm turning everything on time and on time. My grades are great. And I also have time for my friends. I have such a really good balance of academics, friendships, and extracurriculars. Wouldn't that feel amazing? And it is certainly possible. Tonight, we're going to discuss how to make that happen. And I have with me my special guest, Sarah Remlinger. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. Sarah is an executive function coach with me here at Educational Connections. And what I love about Sarah is that she specializes in college students, although she also works with high school students. In fact, she's been in education as a classroom teacher for over 20 years. I think she's especially gifted at helping kids find their independence as they become adults. So Sarah, let's start by talking about some common issues among new college students. What's going on?
Yeah, so the new research is showing that this year is like the first year that students have been the least prepared out of the last 35 years of college. I think some things that are contributing to that, COVID kind of had some very well-meaning policies that came out of that is now hurting our students. Things like extended due dates, things like not giving late penalties for assignments. There's been many cases that students can save their work up for the entire quarter and then get it done all in the last couple weeks of class and then get pretty great grades, where that just isn't the case in college. They're used to some standardized things at the high school level, like how their learning management system looks across classes versus going to college and every professor is different and runs their class differently. They're also used to the digital to-do list that their learning management systems have provided. And there isn't always that in place at college, and the professors are still expecting a student to know what is due and when it's due. College professors are now saying that where they used to have their students read 35 pages a week, that was nothing. They may be, and I'm talking per class, can get their kids to read 10 pages. So there's something going on. The colleges are realizing they're not preparing their students. They're not going to back down their standards. They're realizing that that's not the answer, that we really need to bring students up. So we have a lot of our students that are caught in this web of unfortunately what they came out of and then trying to raise the bar. And so a lot of families are just stuck, and we have kids that are just so frustrated and parents that are so frustrated. And that's really where we get to come along.
Yes, Sarah, talking about coming along. So much of your work, I know, and all of our other coaches is based on trust.
Yes.
And really working on the same team with the students, because kids, when they go off to college, they kind of want to do their own thing. They don't want another mom looking after them. How do you change the trajectory of the relationship so that they want to work and trust and respect and want to work with you?
So a lot, many of our first sessions are really about trust building. They're really about getting them to understand that we truly are a coach. We're not that, running between them and mom and telling them all the things that they are doing or that they are not doing, that is not our job. Our job is really to coach them up and to encourage them and to inspire them to just be the very best that they can absolutely be and to reach all the potential that they have within them. So we're just really people that are coming alongside to really believe in them, to help them maybe see things differently through a different framework. I'm always talking to my students that we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress. We really are. We just want to see, it doesn't have to look like a straight line, but just, especially students now, again, part of the change that has happened, they're also seeing that students will work for those they've had relationship with. And I know parents, I know my own kids, the teachers that they had better relationships with are the teachers that they did better with. And so that is true in this situation as well. And it really helps them come alongside and really want to do what we have to offer.
Sarah, I can imagine that when you get new students, that they come to you with varying levels of openness.
Mhm.
And part of this is based on, that trans theoretical model of the stages of change. Tell us about that and how it impacts the students' willingness to accept help.
So at the college level, I've never had students be like, no, I don't want to do this. I have to do it. My mom's forcing this. I have had that at the younger levels, but at the college level, I'll have like, well, I'll try it. I don't really have any kind of expectations of this. I don't really think this is going to work. And so, but they're willing to kind of give it a try. And so you can see that they're kind of in that contemplation stage. The other piece of the stages of change, what is so important is we really evaluate kind of where they're at across the board with all executive functioning skills, where they're at with how they study, where they're at with their calendaring, where they're at with, just all the things of planning and chunking and all the things. So we talk to parents normally with college students, like, well, I'll have a conversation with a parent. They'll kind of give me where they think that their college student is at. And then I might have a very different conversation because their child isn't at the pre-contemplation stage. And so this student assessment that you see right here is an absolute invaluable tool because it really gives us an idea of where they're at. And then we kind of work from there. It doesn't mean that we scrap everything, that they are in that very bottom stages of change and not ready to change. What we have found is we start with the things, regardless, sometimes as parents, we think we understand what they need first, second, third. But what we have found working with students is that we start with what they're willing to change. And so once they start to see some real positive effects in the things that they're willing to change, they change where they're at on that stages of change with the other things that they were really digging in with. So this is super helpful, and this is very fluid from the first time that we give this assessment, and then as we keep an eye on it as we work with the students.
I love this assessment too, Sarah. I found it to be a game changer. And I
Yes.
also like how it just kind of opens up the dialogue initially with the student
Yes.
to talk about what's going on in college. All
Well,
right.
and that
So
procrastination piece, it really opens up. We get to really kind of dive in. Why are they procrastinating on these certain classes and not others? I mean, and to your point, like, and it's things like as parents, we think that there's only one reason for procrastination. There isn't. And so again, us knowing that and being able to work with that is huge.
yeah, for sure. One of the other things that's so important for college students, not just tackling procrastination and all those other things, but it's really prioritizing what they need to get done. And I like this visual um, because it shows us that when you put the right things first, everything fits into your day a lot better. Tell us about the rock, pebble, sand method.
So this is really where we come in as coaches and and I always tell them, and I've done this visual actually on camera with them so they can really truly see this, and we do it both ways. And so the rocks are representing the big things, have to do or die kind of things. We have to do those. The pebbles are very still important, but they're not the do or dies, but they're still very important. The sand are all the things we want to do, but it's okay if they don't get done. So they're like the scrolling through social media, the binge watching Netflix, all those things that are like, yeah, we all love to do that. But if we don't get these other things done, it's going to be a problem. So we show them that when you prioritize the first things and then work backwards, it all will fit. And, and then I, we always joke about how you didn't spend 4,000 hours watching cat videos. Your life is not ultimately, changed. However, if you didn't do anything on that project that's due next week, there could be some life altering changes. So again, getting them and helping them to see that. One of the things that's so important at the college level is showing them, again, they are so trying to adult. They are trying to kind of reject all the things that have kind of been put on them in very good intentions, like in our homes with our own children as parents, what the schools have tried to do with how to get them to plan. Everyone had a planner from this grade to this grade. And as soon as a planner isn't required, I see kids railing against this, and especially at the college level. So we start with prioritizing that will lead to this art of calendaring. And the reason why we call it an art is because it doesn't always look the same. Like I love the whole old school planner, but my college students, they don't necessarily. So there's so many apps out there that's going to feed every single personality type or what their bent is. A lot of my students will just work off checklists. And so that's what they do. They make digital checklists. They make Google Sheets checklists. They have prioritized checklists, things that work like that, that isn't necessarily the traditional calendar. However, it's getting the job done. What is awesome again about our coaching part, especially in this is where we get to evaluate with them in a very safe space. Did this work for you this week? Maybe it didn't. Do we need to switch it? Do we need to change it? So we're always asking the open-ended questions, especially around this. This is one of the things I have found working with college students that is one of the most fluid, trying to figure it out deals of all the things that we do in executive functioning. So we have to kind of handle it with kid gloves. However, the importance is there, and we do stress that.
That's so helpful. I mean, to your point that, kids will rail against what they've been made to do in the past, and
Mhm.
finding what they're willing to do is so key. So is studying. Kids have, actually, I should say, kids don't always know how to study. And that's a common complaint when parents call our office looking for help. They'll say, I'm really worried about college. My child kind of got through high school just by being smart and doing the bare minimum amount of work and still got good grades. But really finding the way in which you study best is key for college.
Yes. And also, one of the things that is really hindering this, again, one of those meant to help COVID policies, but really ended up hurting us, is the whole retaking of tests. So what their strategy became is, I go take the test and figure out what's on it, and then I'll come back to the table and then study. That's not exactly an effective study way on any level. And so we're kind of having to undo some of those bad habits that they have gotten into. And sometimes when they get to college, they have their first B. They have their, first non-A grade. Part of that also is what they're finding across the country is the inflated grades. So students who thought they were super effective studiers because they had straight A's were actually not, because they got to retake tests. They had inflated grades. And so that's why, honestly, colleges are going back to those standardized tests, because they can't standardize grades. When a student sends in their, here's my grades and all the things, they can't compare apples with apples across the country like they can with standardized test scores. So again, understanding how to study, understanding how to take high stakes tests, because even though if it's not an ACT, SAT, there's plenty of that kind of testing in college. That's an entirely different method on how to and what to. And if they haven't built their base in high school like it was supposed to, they're really starting behind the 8 ball, so to speak.
Have you ever had a student where you started working with a student and you're like, oh my gosh, this child doesn't really have any study habits or
Yes.
any study skills?
Mhm. Very much so. And I mean, I have a number of students, literally their effective studying was, I'm just going to wait to see what's on the test, and then I will know. And I said, and it's like, whoa, stop. This is college. They're not going to do that. And so really helping them understand, like, what is being highlighted in lectures. It's kind of all the things that we grew up knowing. Those are not common sense anymore on how to do that, how to pull information from notes, how to pull information from a lecture, how to read effectively. Like, all these things are really so vital, and and parents are feeling it. Like, they're like, I don't think my kid knows how to study. So, we really kind of walk along with them. And on the point of change, on stages of change, so I had a student that I started with last year in crisis mode at the end of her sophomore year. So I got her right before finals, in absolute worst time ever. And so we were trying to teach some of these study things. Well, they were the way that she was just in crisis mode. So she couldn't exactly absorb everything. But what is interesting, now that she has started in the fall now, she's like, Sarah, we got to go back to those reading tries. Like, she's way more ready to take those things on and really learn those effective things, where before it was like, well, I guess if you think this is going to help. So again, it's that whole stages of change and where they really, really are. And this is where this becomes really important.
So let's dive into that a little bit more. And, starting with strengths.
Mhm.
We often think that, oh, we'll, shore up their weaknesses, but
Mhm.
really getting kids to improve their study habits comes from figuring out what they're already good at.
Yes. So we do lots of things, lots of talking, to find out how they really prefer to learn. So, are you more of an auditory learner? Do you retain more information, when you're hearing it versus when you're writing it versus when you're seeing it? And then just suggesting things for them to try. So, like, my one student, she's a great auditory. She's not great at reading it. So I have another student who needs to see it and isn't great on auditory. So what I've encouraged both of them, they're at different schools, they're across the country from each other, but they need to go find that. They need to go find a study buddy that is opposite of them. So their study buddy can read out loud while the auditory is absorbing it. So it's the little things like that that we help them to realize and practice, and kind of their little aha moments. Learning strength says, what's the best time of day for you to study? Are you a night person? Are you a morning person? And talking about all of that. And that goes into the art of calendaring. So all of that is, super important. Getting out of your dorm room. So someone who's ADHD and has some learning challenges, the worst place to be is in their dorm room by themselves. Go sit in the library where there's natural body doubling happening. Go sit in a coffee shop. Go sit. And again, this is where us as coaches, we throw out a strategy. We say, go do that this week. And we come back and then we get to kind of dial it, really kind of delve into it. Did it work? Did it not? Do we need to do something different? Do we need to change it up, or do we keep it? So that's super important.
I can attest to the issue of studying in your dorm room because that happened with my youngest son. I remember he realized
Mhm.
that, in fact, his coach said, let's talk about where you're studying. And it was kind of like this aha moment. Oh, actually, now I see where I went wrong.
Yes.
So we started using if then strategy. If I get, whatever my rocks and my pebbles are, if I get this, that, and the other thing done, then I can go hang out with my friends. And
Right.
yeah, so place does matter. All right, so let's jump ahead a little bit, Sarah, and talk about some of those study habits, like taking notes in class.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
something that we think they've perfected that in high school, but they oftentimes have not.
Right.
Tell us
So
about it.
again, what has happened is a lot of times in high school, again, COVID kind of helped us out with this. So teachers were handing over their digital form of notes. So what I'm finding is students are going to class and they're kind of just waiting for PowerPoints to be posted. And then they have this, oh my goodness moment. These professors don't hand us their notes. So we talk about, ways, and again, this is where we really customize per student. Every student is so unique that we need to go through and figure out where are their strengths, because we work in strengths, and where are the parts that are their non-strengths, is like what I like to call their weaknesses, so that we can kind of make up for that. So a student that has a hard time processing, we need to go back to recording the lecture. So, and then pulling things out, how to listen for keywords, how to do that. So there's so many strategies in this area, but so many of my students are coming to me, they don't have a clue on how to take a note in class. So this is a really big one that we work with students on.
Absolutely. And I would think along the same lines, extrapolated information,
Mhm.
the same goes for reading strategies.
Yeah. So like I said, professors were assigning 35 plus pages a week, and now they can only assign 10. One of my students last week just said to me, because they just started school, they just got their syllabus, and they're like, I'm never reading all of this. Like, I'm not doing it. And I said, okay, but we still have to come up with a strategy, because what their strategy was is that forget it all. Well, no. That's not the right way. So then we're going to plug in and we're going to try and, dive that down, and try and figure out what it is that they're looking for. Again, teaching them how to read a professor, how to ask the right questions, to understand the parts of reading that are going to be super important. The other thing that is super interesting, a study I just read, so colleges are still kind of textbook, high schools not. And high schools are talking about going back to traditional textbooks, because we're setting our kids up in college because they have no idea how to do a textbook, because everything was electronic. Well, there's kind of some cheats you can do, so to speak, if you have an electronic textbook, that you can't do with the good old textbook. So there's differences in there, and trying to reteach some of that, yes, we should have learned in high school, but we didn't.
Yes, for sure. Um, Sarah, parents just asked a question about recording lectures. Is that
Yes.
generally okay for college students to do? And what do they just record it from the voice memo on their phone?
That's what most do, is that they do that recording. Some, they do it. I think there's more recording going on than probably, than they realize, because what's funny is, when I suggest this to students, they're like, oh, I don't know that we can do that. And I'm like, well, go back to your syllabus, because they would state that if that is not allowed to be recorded. What is crazy, and I have not vetted all of these things, but I am just starting to learn about all of the different kind of AI tools that are available for students to be able to use well on a recorded lecture to kind of help them really assimilate so much of this information. And again, teaching them how to summarize it down. That's another thing along these strategies. That's what students aren't knowing how to do, how to summarize well, which is key to studying and to taking tests. So all of this is all part of it.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Okay, let's jump ahead and talk a little bit about accountability partners. You're kind of like an accountability partner to kids, to
Yes.
college students.
Yes, I kind of become a little bit like their life coach. I mean, to be honest, because when we get into college, we're not only talking about just getting work done, but we're talking about balancing their entire life. So we're looking at all the social things that they have. We're talking about, some of my kids are moving into apartments for the first time. So now we have to talk about meal planning going into their schedule, because how are you going to eat? And if your brain isn't fueled, how are you going to learn? And no, you can't live on fries for, your life and expect to do well. So like, I'm talking to them about nutrition, and I'm talking to them about sleep. And, again, those priorities, those big rocks, they become, because they don't have mom around. And so this is where we get to talk about these real life situations that if mom were to walk in, I know with my own kids, somebody else has to do it. Just like you said, Ann, someone else has to do it, because I could say these same things to my kids. My own children will reject it. But if we come alongside, it's coming from someone else. It's the same voice, it's the same message, but it's coming from somebody else that has a whole lot less like low stakes safety. And so this is one of those key things, because again, you go back to establishing that relationship, they're more willing to tell you things like, well, I was out partying a little too much last night. And so you gently can talk to them about, okay, so what were the effects of that? And what do we need to do different? So again, putting it back on them. They are the drivers of their education. They are the drivers of their calendar. They are the drivers of all of it. And so just really working them towards independence. And this probably is one of the most favorite parts of my job, to just really come along and just encouraging them in all things to make them successful.
Sarah, let's talk a little bit about self-advocacy, really asking for help.
Yes.
That is so, so important in college, because
Yes. And they
there's so
don't
much
know how
more
to operate
independently.
their campus. They
Yeah,
don't know
right.
where the writing lab is, or that there is one. They don't know that they should go to the study sessions that the teaching assistant is holding on a weekly basis. They don't know that they should be showing up at office hours with questions, whether they have them or not. Let's you and I put some questions and let's go talk to them. Like, they don't know these things. The other part is students I saw in the chat, students with learning challenges. This is huge. Like, we have to teach them to self-advocate, because in high school, parents can do that. In college, that's a new ball game. They have to self-advocate. So as coaches, we get to work with them to make sure that they're getting their accommodations, to make sure that they're getting all the things that they have access to and using them well. So I have literally seen students go from failing to thriving when they were taught self-advocacy and making sure that they're going to the testing center, because they do have that accommodation, and their test scores just soared and soared and soared. I mean, I had one student who was told she should drop out of nursing school because she has learning disabilities. And so when I helped her through that, and she went to the testing center and started doing those things, she graduated with just like, she's like this most amazing ER nurse now. So all those things that seem to be a little bit of a deficit, back in the day, are actually superpowers in her job. We just had to get her to that place, and to kind of work through that system. And that's where, again, getting all those people in your child's life, especially if there's learning challenges, is so important.
I love that story. It's amazing that she's making such a difference now as a nurse.
Yes.
So ultimately, we want our kids to build independence,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So Independence, and this is the hard part as a parent, independence and the road to that is not always, usually never straight. And so as parents, we want it to be straight. We want them to get from point A to point B. But it truly is, this is all of our goal. Like, we are on your page here at Educational Connections to get them to independence. But it doesn't always look straight. It doesn't always happen as fast as we want it to. But progress, that's what we keep building into these students. Progress. We help them always look back from where they were and looking forward, like just like in the short term and the long term, so that they can truly see where they're going. Because when they start to see positive difference, when they start to see progress where they thought they were kind of failing, because of course it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 10 steps forward, 3 steps back, that they get the self-confidence to really truly go to that place of independence. And that is just so exciting. And they really start taking over our sessions, and they are coming to me and they're like, Sarah, we got to work on this and this and this. And I need help with this. Where before it's like, okay, well, what are we gonna do? Well, I don't know. So like, I see it in my sessions, and it's so rewarding.
I love that. You're right. Success is a great motivator.
Yeah.
And I know, Sarah, every student is different in terms of um, how they learn best, how they take notes, reading strategies, their calendar. But there is a process that we follow. Talk to us about that and the steps that you take with students.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to say right here. First off, it's virtual. And I know some parents, like, again, COVID broke a lot of things in all of us. And so we immediately hear virtual, and we hear the 4 letter Zoom. And so we kind of have these pictures of whatever that may have been like for your student, and, the potential nightmare that it was. We don't use Zoom here. We use something called Lesson Space. And Lesson Space is amazing. It's a one-on-one call. They receive a link. It's their link. It's like mine and that student's link, no one else's, forever. It's our own little place. In this little space, we have the ability to put on a whiteboard that it's an interactive, so both the student and I can work on it. We have documents we can put in there. They can share their screen in there. We can throw confetti at them. It's one of the most exciting things my students have. We can set off fireworks when things go well. So there's just a whole lot of interactive going on within this lesson space that Zoom doesn't really offer. So first off, there's that. Second off, having virtual, and especially at the college level, again, they're trying that art of calendaring. They're trying to figure out their planning and prioritizing. Sometimes it's not always smooth. Because I'm about relationship, and so are our coaches, sometimes we get a quick text that's like, hey, I need help. Well, we are able to jump on. Hey, are you available in the next 20 minutes? And we can jump on, and we can kind of help them get unstuck, because that's sometimes where students will, if they just don't have anywhere to reach out. And again, that whole asking for help. But if we make it safe for them, they're going to get unstuck much quicker than, maybe if we had to wait to go have that appointment in person in a week from now. So it does give some flexibility. But how we go through this is we have a 5-step process that we do this with, each time. And it's right here on the screen. And we literally look at the week. What went well? What needs to be improved? What should we keep? And we just do this. Like, we don't get attached to anything. Like, we're just trying a bunch of things. I mean, I've always set that up. I have a toolbox with lots of tools. You got to find what works for you. Then we go through the planning and prioritizing, the rocks, the pebbles, the sand, all the things that they want to do, need to do, and start setting that out for them. Again, asking the open-ended questions. We're not the ones that drive that, especially at the college level. We're asking the open-ended questions. We're getting them to show us they're putting it in. They're doing all the things. The breaking and chunking of assignments, again, that is one of those skills that our students do not have. We're getting them to, like, I love starting students now in the fall when they're getting their syllabus. They don't know how to chunk a syllabus. They don't know how to read a syllabus. We can put that on a huge calendar for them, electronically, paper, whatever they choose. And so this is an important thing that we walk them through that. And so we're always looking at this. This is all taking a few minutes every single time. Then we're coming up with that customized strategy. What tools are we going to try this week? What worked last week to continue? What are we going to try this week? And then we're going to kind of just reflect on our whole session. Was this helpful? Was this not helpful? Let's set some goals, because that's also something kids are really bad about, is just setting kind of these nebulous goals that mean nothing. I want good grades. Well, what does that mean? So we kind of walk them through that whole process so that they can really have things that they can get success and can measure it and to feel so great about. So this is definitely the process that we work, even though we have this massive customization that happens around step 4.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. And I have to say, although you are not my son's coach, he worked with Susan. It was like such a life-changing relationship for him because he went off during COVID.
Yeah.
It was really difficult, and it didn't go so well at first, but she swooped in and really taught him the skills he needed to be successful in a very difficult situation,
I love that.
using these steps. So thank you for sharing them with everybody. And parents, if we can help you, we're more than happy to support your student. Kathy, Jennifer, and Ann Stewart, all are program managers on my staff. They specialize in working with students that need a little bit of extra help to get going. And they work a lot with high school and college students, and they're happy to chat with you. So I invite you to take the next step with it, which is a 20-minute strategy call. And during this call, Kathy, Jennifer, and Stuart will hear about your child. We'll ask you lots of questions about your child's history, how they're doing now, and ways that we could support them. And even if you decide to go in a different direction, I promise you, you will get some tips from that call that will absolutely help your situation with your child.
And I just want to tell parents, like, we love what we do. We don't do it because we have to. Like, literally, this like fills us. I mean, even my family is like, when I get off calls with my college kids, like, I'm just beaming. I'm just ear to ear. Like, it's so fulfilling for both parts. So anyway, it's just such a positive all the way around. So I just want to throw that in.
Thanks, Sarah. We actually have one question. Jessica asked, how often do you meet with students?
So I meet whatever their need is. So that can go like sometimes it's twice a week, sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's every other week. It depends on the season that they're in. And, again, helping them drive that. In the beginning, I suggest twice a week to get them on that path and then, work from there. So college is a little bit more flexible. Again, we're really trying to pass off the independence and really working towards that accountability partner piece.
Makes sense. Thank you, Sarah. And also, before we all leave this evening, I would love if you could take the survey after the webinar closes. A survey will pop up on your screen asking you a few questions, and that information helps us to plan future events. So I'd be so grateful if you wouldn't mind doing that. Oh, and a couple other questions that just came in, Sarah, if you don't mind. Is the parent said, is that the consultation call with a parent or the student? And it's typically the parent. Your child can be on if they want to, especially since they're a college student. So it can be both for sure. But if your child isn't available, absolutely for you. And then how do you pair students? There's a number of factors, but really a lot of it at this age, obviously is subject area specialty and somebody that works well with students with executive function issues. But really, it's a personality match too. And we want to get lots of information on your child, what type of person they've responded to well in the past. And then we want to pair them with that person that's going to be the most motivating influence to them. And so each morning we meet as a group. There are 5 of us on our team that get together and we talk about each child, each family we're working with, and we put our heads together and think, okay, Susie, who is the best person? Who is the best coach for Susie? Here are all the things that she needs to work on. Here's a little bit about her personality, and we'll brainstorm who is the best for that child. And that's how we do it. So it's extremely customizable. We'll never just say, oh, Jimmy, he's a freshman at Virginia Tech. Let's give him this person. No, there's so much involved in making that really great match. So I hope that's helpful. All right, Sarah, I think that's it for tonight. Thank you again for being my guest.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.